The gloves are a good insulator. Even these little thin plastic gloves keep your hands from burning up too much. We're going to leave some room on there for the shrimp, which we're going to put on in about 10-15 minutes. We'll put the shrimp on.
Competition's a lot more than cooking barbecue. You've got to understand what everybody else is doing, and that means whether it's sticking your ear to the ground or bending the ear of other competitors, you've got to know what's going on and what's winning.
We're going to go ahead and check the briskets and pork now.
I have to believe that I stumbled onto a recipe, and it's still my competition recipe for brisket is still the exact same as it was 11 years ago. That actual recipe, no one knows but me. It follows all the principles that I talked about, but there's no secrets in it. There's something about it that maybe I don't tell everybody everything that is magical.
But a key secret to Staney magic is close attention to temperature.
Up to about 165 to 170, it's going to be in the cooker, getting smoked, getting basted. Then at about 165 to 70, we're going to wrap it in aluminum foil and put it back on the cooker.
The foil, what it does is it allows it to sort of pressure cook or cook in its own steam. It doesn't hurt the smoke flavor very much, but it definitely keeps the product from drying out, and it accelerates the cooking process. It would take a long time to get the brisket and the pork up to 190, 195 if we didn't wrap it. I try to leave my seams, or I always leave my seams pointing straight up. That way, you're not going to have anything leaking out of the seams. And we want to wrap it as tight as we can. And then we're just going to put them right back on the cooker in the exact same spot.
If you want to compete, you can't believe what your neighbors tell you. You can't believe what your family tells you. You can't even really believe what your own heart tells you. You have to go wait and see what the judges say.
Now that the squash are on the grill, we'll go ahead and pull the shrimp off. And we're going to let them sit out of any cooker for about 10 or 15 minutes. They're only going to take about 5 minutes. And when we think the squash are about 5 minutes from being done, we'll go ahead and put the shrimp on there right along with the squash. They'll both be done at the same time. We've been cooking about 6 or 7 hours. We've got a really nice hot fire. But one of the things that I like to do is get in here and move these coals around, kind of liven that fire up a little bit, give it a little more air. The other thing we're going to do is after this 6 or 7 hour period is we're going to open the back of the cooker and we're going to scoop out any of the extra ash that's collected down in the bottom that's not burning anymore.
It's part of the science to barbecue that not a lot of people understand in the beginning, but if you want to be really good at barbecue, you have to use those internal meat thermometers to understand when your food is reaching what stages of tenderness and moisture and all that.
The buzzer went off, therefore our brisket has to be at least 193. It says 194 right now. That thing can get annoying after a while. So we're going to go ahead and probe both of the pieces of meat and see where we're at. And we're up in the 195 to 200 range right there. This is where I like to use this big spatula. It's got enough weight to it that it's not going to bend. Also, by using the spatula, we don't run any chance of pulling it across the grates and breaking it open. There's a lot of juice in there that we might need, and we want to keep that steam in there and not lose any of that liquid. And we do the same thing with the brisket. By now, ideally, if we're to cook off, we've got about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to when this has to be turned in. We want to let both the brisket and the pork sit out of the cooker for about at least an hour before we cut into them or work with them. That allows those juices. What we've done is we've cooked these to an internal temperature of 190 degrees plus. A lot of the juice and all has moved to the outside of the meat, and over the next hour we want a lot of that juice and natural juices in there to move back towards the center of the meat and be a little more consistent product. So we're going to let these sit just like this for about 45 minutes to an hour. Then we'll start unwrapping it and starting to get ready to prepare it. One of the things that I always do in competitions, I keep a log every time I cook. I write down what time I put things on, I write down what my temperatures were, I always write down when I would have wrapped something, and I write down when I took it off. So I've just got to make a couple more notes here about what we did today. But I do feel that taking notes and documenting what you do is very important if you want to go from being an average competition barbecuer to an excellent competition barbecuer.
We kind of ended 1992 as a good team. We had qualified for the first time for the Jack Daniels. We won a first place at the Jack Daniels in pork shoulder. But in 1993, I really wanted to take it up another notch. And what happened that year was I took all my notes from the previous 2 years and I started cooking, and this is no lie, I started cooking the very first weekend in January, and I cooked every weekend on my backyard cookers, and I kept notes from January through April. And so when it got time to when it came time of the first competition, I had elevated my performance and consistency again to a really high level.
Really good record keeping is a really good way to make sure that you're achieving consistent barbecue. Okay, it's been about an hour and we've got our brisket and pork butts that are done, and we're going to take them over to our carving station. Look at that bone. That's exactly how you know it's done. We know it's done from the temperature, but when the bone comes out right like that, you know it's done. We'll go ahead and pull that bone out of there, and we'll just kind of let it sit there, and we'll go on to the brisket. We want to cut the product against the grain with the flat. So we can see here from that cut that the grain on the flat is running this way. So we're going to want to cut perpendicular to that grain with our very first cut. I like to see for competition how nice my smoke ring is. I also like to see if I missed any of those pieces of fat, and as we can see from this one, we don't really have any of those bad pieces of fat. Then what I like to do is take one cut right out of the middle, and lay it down, put the brisket back together, and check the flavor of it. I like to slice the part that has more of the fat on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut these about 1/4 inch slice. The absolute best eating, remember this is the flat, and this piece up here is the point. The absolute best eating on the entire brisket is up here in this area. This is what we in Kansas City and a lot of other places in the country call the burn ends. That came off the top of the brisket. We trim a little bit of fat that was there in the middle. And like I said before, now that the product's cooked, the fat is the softest part. And we just kind of go through there and take a little more fat off. And then we can chop this up for our burn ends. And what I like to do in a presentation is we'll shingle up about 6 or 7 pieces of brisket, and then we'll put some burn ends right there in the front. The nice thing about the burn ends is you've got that nice black, and what I try to do is show as much of the black edges to the judges as we can. If they were looking at it in a container, we'd want them to see those black edges. Not only does it look pretty, it's also the best tasting part. And there's your brisket. You got your sliced brisket, which is primarily from the flat, and the burn ends from the top. Okay, now we're going to move on to the pork butt. And like I said, that little bit of extra time that we gave it to set is going to help us out a lot, because unlike the brisket, we've got to work the pork butt with our hands. When we're looking for presentation pieces, we're looking for really tender pieces. We're looking for nice variance in color. You can see we've got a real nice smoke ring, and we've got the nice juicy meat. We've also got the bark and the smoke ring. And you just kind of break it apart and look for those really nice pieces of pulled pork. The judges are going to be judging based on appearance. We're going to want to get these pieces arranged in a really nice manner that shows off the smoke ring, the succulence of the meat, and makes it look really appetizing. There's no better eating